Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friends of the Force. I am your sad host, Sarah.
And I am your sadder host, Brad.
And this is going to be a sad, loud, shocked, amazed,
slightly aroused.
Oh. I mean, well, yes. A conversation on episode 5. I forgot we were at in the timeline. Episode 5 of The Acolyte, entitled Night, which is sequentially what comes after day. You know, it's, yeah. And this episode was directed by Alex Garcia Lopez and written by Kor Adana and Cameron Squires. So thanks, friends, for ruining my life. Love you.
Man, we have so much to cover. I knew going into this week, we had heard that Leslie's favorite episode was episode 5. You know, what a cliffhanger for episode 4. What did we think was really going to happen? And we'll warn you, listener, we're just going to kind of rip the Band-Aid off here very soon, but this is going to be a roller coaster of emotions for us on this episode. And we're diving in. We're diving in deep here.
So let's start
deep
with
into the muscle, one might say. The bicep.
Oh, well.
We're getting all up in there, you know what I mean?
Well, yes.
Yeah. The bicep of it all. Sure.
Right.
The tricep of it all.
Well, also, yes.
No thigh yet. No thigh.
Well, never say never, you know?
There's always episode 6.
Anyway, let's start out with our segment that we set out with at the beginning of the season. Oh my Yord. So Brad, what was your favorite Yord moment in this episode?
Oh my God, Sarah, I'm so glad you asked. My favorite Oh my Yord moment of this episode was when Yord was alive.
It's crazy that you say that because I think the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked it when Yord was living.
Yeah, I liked it when he was taking in oxygen, converting it in his lungs to carbon dioxide, and then breathing out the carbon dioxide. A very natural, process for carbon-based life forms. I really liked that part of the episode, particularly where he was breathing a lot, like in steady succession to the point where he could speak words and his brain was actually functioning, and his
and the
neck
heart
was,
and the heart was pumping blood around his body. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I also really liked it when he was running away from the battle scene.
Yes.
With Osha.
Yes. Like smart, get to the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get out of here. Let's go tell the Jedi about the Sith Lord that we just saw.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
That was my favorite part of my Oh my Yord. Yeah.
Oh my Yord.
Oh my Yord.
What great parts. What great parts of the show.
I just have to say up front, as somebody who we went to the Acolyte premiere and spent the majority of that night at the Scum and Villainy Cantina, me talking about how much I loved Yord, how much everything reminded me of Yord.
He really, that's actually very true. He tweeted, "Oh, everything reminds me of Yord." And
because it did. Yep.
And you were really on the Yord Horde train right away. So devastating.
A little devastating, not just for me, but all of Yord Horde Nation.
And who's not a member of the Yord Horde at this point,
Yeah, I feel like if you're not, like, okay, good for you being edgy. Congrats.
Right.
Have fun.
Right. Yeah.
Although I guess those people aren't experiencing the pain that we're experiencing. So I guess they're
better off.
Hong Kong.
They're better off. Yeah.
They're better off emotionally right now.
Right.
I was a bit shocked. But I will say what I loved about this episode. I love-hate relationship because this episode had a lot of stakes, a lot of consequence. And I love that.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of stakes and consequences, let's read a quote from Leslie. I think a good twist is not about hiding everything from the audience and throwing it on them like, hey, this is what you didn't see. We hit it so well that you didn't see this. I think a good twist is telegraphing what's going to happen. And once it does, executing it without an ounce of pity or sentimentality. So how about the biceps?
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our big reveal. We've been talking about it for weeks. Who is the Tooth Fairy? Who is the Tooth Fairy? Listeners, friends,
countrymen.
We found out.
We found out. I did tweet after last week's episode that we've never seen Chimera and the Tooth Fairy in the same room.
Mhm.
And it turns out they're actually always in the same room.
Right.
Right. So, yeah. And tucks hair behind ear. I'm not mad about it.
You should have seen my reaction when the mask came off and the way that the setup of the face reveal, I think, was so cleverly done, right? Like,
yeah.
Jackie takes off the mask, which badass Jackie, like, what a way to go out, unmasking the Sith Lord of the show. And then we don't see him at first. We just see him whip out his second secret lightsaber. And then the body falls and there is Manny Jacinto, sweaty, hair sweaty, biceps glistening, dirt all over him, rat, like he just exudes sexiness. Like he's just exuding like, I just showed up in the show and now I'm the center of attention from here on out. Congratulations, you played yourself, Jedi.
Right.
You thought this was a show about the Jedi? You thought this was a show about the High Republic? Well, it is, because the High Republic is full of tragedy. This is a show about the Sith, and we've known that. Leslie wanted to tell a story from the Sith perspective, and here we have arrived at that station.
Well, have we?
We have.
Have we?
Yeah.
Just because he says, well, you can call me Sith, does that make him a Sith?
No. I would say she wanted to tell a story from the dark side perspective.
Thank you.
Whether or not he's a Sith or a Sith, we'll talk about. Sith and not Sith, we'll talk about. But yeah.
Yeah. So in the words of our good friends over at Force Time, who tweeted this within the High Republic logo banner, what the fuck, Leslie?
Oh boy. I gotta say, like,
or the other meme, Leslie knows what she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back to this quote that you said, and I really liked the twist being what everybody kind of suspected. And to me, that's sort of allowing and trusting your audience to put the pieces together. Like, you very obviously leaving those breadcrumbs to say, like, if you pay enough attention, like, you're going to kind of put the dots, you're going to connect the dots. And I love that. It's kind of like giving agency to us as viewers to like have fun with it and also have that rewarding feeling of like, we knew it, right? And it's not like this weird out of left field curveball that's like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would that be the case? Or like, why would that person be that you know, it really followed, like, again, like that. She really telegraphed it well for us. And I appreciated that as a viewer. And I had a lot of fun when we found out, like, it was Chimera. I was like screaming. I was laughing hysterically. It was weird to go from like, oh no, Jackie, to like, oh my God, it's Chimera. Like within the span of 2 seconds. It was very overwhelming.
Yeah. So, but let's we'll go into the episode here, but I think we should highlight a little bit just like what the viewing experience was like for you, because this is like a roller coaster ride where we're at the drop. We're at the top of the lift hill when it starts. So like, what was your experience like? What were the vibes in your household?
So we got the lights low, surround sound on, pizza, the whole kit and caboodle. We were ready, but we also had a bad feeling that this episode was going to do something very surprising. And we knew last week that the red shirts were going to be there and they were probably going to be like lightsaber fodder for the Sith, obviously. And lo and behold, like, we find that out right in the beginning. We see that very, very quickly, but it was another misdirect by Leslie. Like, she included so many red shirts to make us think like, oh, your favorites are also going to be okay because we have the red shirts here. Your characters have plot armor. Nope, not at all. And so I think when I realized like where this episode was going and how many people we were actually going to lose, I was a bit scared and I felt a little tense. And it was kind of fun to actually feel that within a Star Wars, because I think for so long we're so used to knowing how things will go because we're based on where we are in the timeline. And not that it takes away the tension or the stakes of any of those moments, but like really being in the space during this episode of not knowing what was going to happen was kind of exciting.
Oh, yeah. I had such an experience watching this episode because I live at home. So my parents walked in from being gone the whole day at like 7:55. And I was like, great, you're home in time for Star Wars. But in my mind, I was like, oh, crap. They've riled up the dogs by walking in. They're going to talk. Like, now I'm not in the prime viewing setting for this episode. And I'm in the middle of eating a pizza as 8 o'clock hits, and I'm ready. My mom is like doing PT in the family room. My brother and my dad are talking about motorcycles. And here I am scarfing pizza into my mouth while turning this episode on. I was like sitting on the ground. I at one point was pacing. I was yelling. I was theorizing. I was at one point I had both of my hands on the TV console and had my face like right up to the TV. Like, I swear to God. I was like this. I wish there was a camera on me, because it would have been hilarious to review back how insane I felt this entire episode. Like, I felt crazy town, because the experience of watching this episode for the first time it's just, it goes and it goes and it goes. And it just punches you the whole time. And the 1-2 punch that you mentioned earlier of Jackie's death into the reveal of Chimere as the stranger / tooth fairy / Sith in quotations was insane and detrimental to my mental health. Crazy. So good. And there was, I think, a tweet from Jordan Mason that said, I'm so sorry to Redacted. And then the meme was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know your game, about his arms. And I also apologize that I underestimated the power of Manny Jacinto's arms. They are so powerful.
God, I don't even know where to begin with this episode. We're going to be so discombobulated throughout, and I apologize for listeners for this listening experience ahead of time. But yeah, this felt like a religious experience for me watching this episode. I don't know how to describe it. Yeah, so like I want to say like Andor is our favorite Star Wars TV show. Like, we think like hands down that's like our favorite. Right? Don't
speak for me. Just kidding. Right? You're right.
Okay, right. And the Acolyte is like right up there too. Like, it is so good. It's hitting a lot of things that we love about Star Wars, and like seeing lightsaber action like back in the mix again. This show and this episode in particular, with, I would say, the best lightsaber choreography that we've ever seen in Star Wars, I think was just, I would say this rivaled Anakin versus Obi-Wan on Mustafar. Like, this is up
are
there.
About to do top 10 lightsaber battles and put this at the top right away.
Yeah, I'm gonna do top 10 lightsaber duels.
Top 10 lightsaber duels, and this is number 1. And you saw it yesterday for the first time ever, and you're like, yeah, shit, that's number 1.
But I'm just saying, like, the level of excitement that I had, and like, I think this episode was the definition of faster and more intense. And like, Leslie knew what she was doing. There was another EW quote where she talked about how some of the feedback and the writing and the prep was, you know, there's a lot of fighting. Is the audience going to tune out? And she said, like, no, I'm super confident that they're going to love this. And she's right. Like, this is the definition of what fast and more intense means. Like, in the mind of George Lucas, it's like, you keep punching and punching and punching and punching, and you don't stop, and you throw in some moments between characters and you punch some more. And this was the most electrified I had felt since the throne room scene in The Last Jedi. Like, that's probably the last time I remember feeling the sort of, and maybe even the Exegol scene with Rey and Ben, like, you know, lightsaber pass behind the head and both of them kind of fighting together. Like, it's these moments where I'm just like, oh, something shifted in the water. Like, something in the air is different. And I think when we logged onto Twitter, you know, this is the equivalent of the Red Wedding for Star Wars. Like, something felt different. You know, the Reylos were back. The Reylos were like, wake up, banging
the Reylos
pots.
Coming back was so funny. Like,
they're like, we're back, wake up from the grave.
I know many Reylos have moved on, and we're a couple of Reylos who have stuck around for a number of reasons, right? But I love the Reylos being like, wait a second, Reylos, if you had walked away, it might be your time to walk back.
There are so many Reylos who, coming out of this episode, binged all 5 episodes within the last day. Yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
There are people who have like signed right
Love
on.
Love you, friends.
Yeah.
Love you, friends.
Incredible
Welcome
stuff.
back. Yeah.
If Star Wars is good at one thing, it is a hot villain that makes you go, I mean, oh, if so bad, why so hot? You know?
Right. Right. I love all the villains. Why not? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fiction. I'm here to have a good time. I'm not here to have not here for a long time because they're villains. If they murder me, I'm outie. Like I'm out of here, you know? Anyway, I really enjoyed all the tweets after this episode. And I was periodically just like checking my phone to see if you had messaged me. I really was. I was like, I wonder if Brad has messaged me. Oh, he hasn't. But I was getting so many notifications during that hour that had nothing to do with Star Wars. It was like my K-pop friends like messaging me about things. I was like, oh, away. This is not important. I was like, oh my God. And then I was so glad to get your text at the end of the episode and then go on Twitter and like every single tweet that was losing their mind.
Yeah, we were all collectively going through it. I feel like that night on Twitter, which like Star Wars Twitter started off on a very, very weird note this week, a very extremely weird note. And
that's
having that whiplash too of being like, I don't know about Star Wars Twitter right now, to being like, oh guys, we're so back, we're so in it, we're all like screaming and crying and throwing up right now. Oh my God. You know, it kind of made up for a lot of the weird vibes.
There was one tweet, I forgot who tweeted it, so I sincerely apologize, but it was like, screw your fandom woes, Acolyte's not your comfort show. like, okay, ready to turn on Acolyte, and then everybody dies.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, well let's like just jump into it because I think there's a lot of things throughout this episode that we got to talk about. But first and foremost, like starting with Osha waking up, I loved that we didn't start from the same point of view that we ended episode 4 on, right? Like we're kind of also experiencing that disorientation that Osha has. We're like, where are we? What's going on? We hear lightsabers in the distance. We're just as anxious as Osha to find out what's going on, and to already see one dead Jedi. Like, oh shit, we got some catching up to do apparently as viewers because we missed a moment. Something bad's going down.
You know, so when we were at the premiere, before we went, we watched all of the trailers and things that had been released. And one of them was like really spooky. And I was like, oh no, have I gotten myself into a horror? I'm weak. Like, I can't handle this. This was the scariest episode because it was like, here's all these deaths. We're not sparing anybody. And right away, we see a dead Jedi. And that was like, and I'm not saying this negatively, but really jarring as like as a intro into this episode. It was very compelling narratively, but it really set up right away how bad it was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it says on the Star Wars episode guide, it said Leslie Headland had paired the episodes of Day and Night as being inspired by the movie Alien and the movie Predator. So Alex Garcia Lopez directing both of these. It's kind of interesting because Alien, you've seen Alien, right?
I haven't seen any of them.
Okay. I don't actually know if I've seen the original Predator, but like I know the premise of it, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger in the jungle, like getting hunted by the Predator and like trying to outsmart it, basically.
It is now, if I'm gonna be wrong, then edit this out. Is Prometheus within this universe?
Yeah, Alien. There's like the original Alien films, and like Prometheus is like a prequel to Alien, but it came out like in the 2010s.
That's the only one I've ever seen because my parents took me to it. And I think it was like one of the first R-rated movies my brother and I ever saw.
We got Alien Romulus coming out this summer, which has Kaylee Spaney in it. You should go see it.
I don't know who that is.
She played Priscilla Presley in the Priscilla movie. Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't actually help me identify who she is in this moment because I could not picture her. But, you know, like I know what Priscilla Presley and know what she looks like. So
point being, Chimere is the alien. Chimere is the predator. And so I think like setting up that tone of this episode, like I was scared. I was frightened.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was scared. I was like, this is the horror movie episode. I've been spooked. I've been scared. Ruh-roh.
But also all the High Republic books we've read, we were primed for this moment.
Yeah, when somebody was like, this is actually the most High Republic it's ever been, I went, oh, you're so right. Screw you for being right. Because, yeah, I should stop loving characters. I should stop getting attached. It's time to go. Like, this is the High Republic. Everyone you've ever loved is going to kick the bucket.
And I love too that earlier today, Justina Ireland on her Instagram story said, it's Star Wars, the High Republic, don't get attached, skull emoji. I love that. Like, we should have known going into the series. Like, we wanted it. We asked for it, and now we have received. So thus we suffer for our ask and our desires.
Yeah, it's really silly. It's really silly because this much like the Rising Storm, I'm 100% certain is like an episode or a thing that I'm going to be thinking about for literal years because it literally traumatized me. But then I'm also going to be like, I'd kill to watch it again for the first time. You know, like, what am I? What are we? What is this? Like, why are we doing this to ourselves? But also, I'm so glad that we're all here, you know?
Right.
What a great and devastating party to be invited to.
We pan over to the battle that's already waging, like Red Shirts versus Chimere. What did you think of this opening combat sequence? Because again, I think this is like top tier choreography for Star Wars. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was like it was the lightsaber battle I've always wanted, I feel like, in Star Wars. Just the way that Chimere moved and the Stranger moved, like, oh, so good.
Yeah, so I want to like take this opportunity to talk about the costume just a little bit because he is fully clothed with the exception of with the exception of his arms.
Sorry.
And I think that it was really interesting because I think one, it really highlighted the unnatural movements. You know, we got that snap of the neck at the end of the last episode, and now we're getting a lot more of the, like, you know, unnatural or like slightly more novel to, I think, a canon Star Wars lightsaber fighting language, like visual language style to what we've seen before. But also, like, it's so interesting. Like, his shape is so interesting because the mask is big. It makes his head look big. His arms are also big, but that's kind of an aside. But the cape and like his whole cape situation makes him look very slim. But also the fact that the cape is kind of tied on or tucked in the front and the back, and he's wearing what seems to be a skirt or, you know, wide leg trousers, gives him a lot of flowiness. So like there's a really interesting juxtaposition in the movement happening between the coveredness of his body and the flowiness of the fabrics on his body against the like visual of just seeing his bare arms and seeing how they actually move, not the flow, if that makes sense. And like seeing him in the mask and seeing how he moves his head. I just thought that was really, really fascinating, a really solid and exciting choice from the design teams on this, because they could have designed him differently and he would have literally moved differently if they had put different clothes on him. And I think that that's what's really compelling here. I also have to hand it to Alex Garcia Lopez for the way that this fight is shot, like between the trees. We don't fully clearly see what's going on. We feel like an outsider to it. And I think that that's really interesting and makes it feel even more chaotic, which I loved.
Yeah, and I want to go back to your point about the way that the stranger moves. For me, it was like visual ASMR. I don't know like how else to describe that, but like it's this weird feeling of I'm very put off by it, but I'm also very satisfied by the way he's moving, because it is both fluid and also very like robotic in a sense. There's this great quote from Manny. Quote, "We wanted a character that isn't just a Darth Vader type of guy who overpowers the screen. It's the concept of the uncanny. It can be a stumble in a person's walk or a twitch in somebody's eye. It's very subtle, and it's just like this uncomfortableness that people experience. And that's what we wanted to hone in on for the Sith Lord." End quote. So I thought that was like a great way of describing it. It's like uncanny. It's uncomfortable to watch, but it's also like I can't look away. Like I'm locked into how he's moving and I want to see how he's moving. He literally headbutts a lightsaber. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, let's talk about like his fighting style a little bit and the headbutt and the lightsaber glitching, because that was some crazy shit.
Like Thrawn Alliances has entered the chat.
Thrawn Alliances has entered the chat. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So the lightsabers hit his armor and then the lightsabers turn off for a second. This isn't Beskar. This isn't anything we've ever seen before in live action. This is something totally different and infinitely scarier.
Oh yeah. It is called cortosis.
Is that confirmed canon, or is that like
yes.
what everybody thinks? Okay.
Yes, yeah. So cortosis was pulled from Legends originally. It's in the helmet, it's in the gauntlet. It's a rare ore that has the ability to disrupt lightsaber blades. Despite its protective qualities, it's not as durable as Beskar. So it basically disables an attacker, doesn't permanently damage the blade, and it absorbs the energy in the helmet. So we previously saw this, but I mentioned Thrawn Alliances because in Thrawn Alliances, that is part of when Anakin and Thrawn are together and they're attempting to collapse the entrance of a cortosis mine on the planet Mokivje. I don't know.
Mokivje?
Mokivje.
Mokivje.
Yeah. So I thought that was really cool.
Alex Damon pronounced it earlier today.
Got it. It's also shown up in A New Dawn. It's showed up in War of the Bounty Hunters, Dr. Aphra, Hidden Empire. So it's been in a couple different places, at least in canon, but originally started in Legends. So I thought this was really cool. I felt like they gave enough context clues to kind of know what was going on, that, hey, this guy has some kind of thing on his armor that disrupts lightsabers. And I feel like that was all we needed to know. Like, we didn't need a lengthy explanation. We didn't need to know how the meat was made. We just kind of picked it up and we're like, oh shit, this is bad. This is really bad for everybody involved.
Yeah, 100%. And it was because Jedi kebab.
Mm-hmm.
That was, after the episode ended, I hit pause and I said, Mom, you got to see this. And she's like looking at her phone. I was like, give me 10 seconds of your time, please, I beg. And I was like, watch this. Pulls one Jedi in, pulls a second Jedi in, Jedi kebab. And she's like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's terrifying.
So scary. But also the stranger's fighting style. So it was confirmed that it's a style of combat called Trakata, which is about like turning your lightsaber on and off repeatedly in combat to disorient your enemy. This was also something that was pulled from Legends, specifically the Old Republic. It was not something that actually like Jedi and Sith used a lot because they felt like it was kind of a demonstration of weakness and a lack of power, according to Wikipedia, our friends at Wikipedia. But it was all about confusing your opponent and creating diversionary feints during combat. So I think that was really cool. And it was very effective here because, you know, if we're thinking this kind of fighting style hasn't been around since the Old Republic, which is when the Sith were around, like, of course, the Sith are going to bring back, the Sith being Chimere in the situation. Of course, Chimere is going to bring back a fighting style the Jedi haven't seen in like 1,000 years because it's going to be even more disorienting because they just haven't seen it. They haven't learned it. They haven't known about it. Yeah.
Okay. It's really, really interesting that he's fighting like this and moving like this, because if we look back to episode 3, maybe, when Vernestra is, or maybe 4, when Vernestra is like, well, it was a Jedi who was one of us who trained Mae. She goes, I don't need a hologram to see that. You know, she's so certain, or even a hologram can tell me that. She's so certain that that this person has been taught in the Jedi arts, and yet later in this episode, Yord is like, he doesn't follow the rules of combat. There's no method to his movements, and he stays in your head. He gets in your head and stays there. And I think that's so interesting because clearly Vernestra is seeing something in the way that Mae moves that signals Jedi, Jedi, Jedi. However, the way that Chimere moves is not logical to this Jedi, which makes me think, this is one of the things I've been theorizing, is that if Chimere has no connection to the Jedi, which I think that that's entirely possible, that he's been studying the same texts that the Jedi learn from or have learned from. I think that he has access to the same artifacts, the same materials. That's my thought, because think about the narrative interest there in like him reading the Octo books and being like, yes, but make it evil. Or like, yes, but I hate this.
Well, there's also the question of, did the Jedi used to use this form of combat in the days of the Old Republic? And if so,
Right.
why did they stop using it? And Chimere's whole point is, I want to use the Force in the way that I want to use it, not the way the Jedi tell me to, right? And so if these are texts or artifacts that have been discarded or not to be followed by the Jedi any longer, right? Like, we know there's a whole trove of Sith artifacts underneath Jedi Temple. The Jedi Temple is built on top of a Sith temple, right? And that whole idea of the Jedi are gatekeepers of knowledge, so they get to say what is the knowledge to be taught and what isn't. And so I think that's always the Sith prerogative is like, we know the ways of that the Jedi don't teach, and that's what we study, or ways that the Jedi used to acknowledge but no longer do. A lot of really interesting dynamics there. I also want to say too, just the lengths that the show went to hide Manny's identity, I think is incredible. I went back and watched the first trailer, and that one shot where the stranger catches the lightsaber in his hand. In the trailer, there's a robe on his arm, hiding his whole arm. Yeah, hiding the entire arm. And in this episode, it's just the bare arm.
Oh.
Fascinating. And it got me thinking about the way that they presented Chimere in the early episodes of the season. And we often see him wearing like almost very baggy like clothes in a way, like a poncho that's way too big for his it goes above his shoulders and actually like covers up the definition of his shoulder muscles. And so I think they were really doing a great job of hiding his physique, because Chimere looks lanky. He looks scrawny. He doesn't look like he could beat somebody up in a fight in some of those early episodes. And the moment we see him take off his cloak, I'm like, Manny Jacinto's got muscles? Huh? Right?
And a lot of them. They're big. Because I went back and I watched a little bit of episode 2 and I went, wait a second, we should have known. He's wearing these draped capes in episode 2. It's the same styling. We should have known. I mean, on top of all the other reasons that are kind of telegraphed to us, which honestly were great. I love the like, you look just like her kind of long gaze. Like that's fucked. Like that's fucked.
Yeah, that was the dead giveaway. That was the biggest of the breadcrumbs for sure.
Totally. And also the fact that we've never seen them in the same room before.
Obviously, right.
Which also makes his comment of he collects people. Well, you know him, he collects people. It makes me wonder what Mae thought about him. What they thought about him, or what he knew about, or what she knew about him. Because also in the last episode, Mae says, well, I doubt he could have gotten here without a guide. Like, why does she only meet him on one planet? Maybe like what kind of things does he know or not know? So yeah, I thought that was really compelling.
Yeah, it makes you ask a lot of questions about what their relationship has looked like, because it's often alluded to throughout this episode. Very interesting stuff, but we continue through in this fight, and I think we get to a point here where Yord and Osha run off. There's some like epic choral music that's definitely giving Duel of the Fates. And Soul and Chimere face off.
Can we please, before we go past the choral music, let's talk about the choral music.
Yeah.
It's like other lightsaber duels where we get choral music. Duel of the Fates.
Yes. Yeah.
But also the choral music is an intro into the chaos that we are feeling in the Force in that moment. It's very similar tonally to the end of the last episode when we were getting that just the noise rumbly into the low strings to portray the chaos in the Force. But now we're getting it with voices, which feels even more sinister in a way. Like there's a lot you can do with instruments to make it sound sinister, but if you make people sound sinister, Like your heartstrings will be tugged and you will be confused, you know? So I thought that was really, really great. But also the sawing of the trees off in the boomerang situation really makes the space a lot bigger, more open, more like viewable to the light of the sky. Except it makes making the space bigger made it scarier.
Totally. The choral music also kind of evokes the sense of like death is coming, almost like you're in like a church at a funeral, like the choral music playing, right?
Like a funeral mass, like a Kyrie.
Yeah.
Kyrie.
Like this is the final stand for these Jedi. Like none of these people are making it back to Coruscant ever.
A lacrimosa even. Oh, fine. Just thinking about Mozart's Requiem.
So good though. It really sets up this fight. You don't remember me. And then Sol says he senses something familiar. You carry a Jedi weapon, but you are no Jedi. God. What did you make of that? Like, you don't remember me. They have a past.
Well, they have a past from yesterday.
True, but did they have a past from before that even?
That's what I'm wondering. As this episode goes on, that's what I'm wondering. Because again, why is Chimere, who is now revealed to be our big bad, our tooth fairy, why is he riding Mae's mission so hard? Why is he so convinced that she needs to do this? Like, what is the deal when she's clearly failed multiple times in killing a Jedi without a weapon? And then she says it's impossible. Like, and then he says later in the episode, oh, well, she's weak. You were always weak. It's like, well, if she was weak, then why push her through this test if she is not going to be a good acolyte anyway for you? You know, I'm a little bit wondering. And then we also get that moment when he's very close to murdering Mae, where he's like, you know, so we're back at the beginning with you two, with Mae on her knees, potentially with the ability to be saved, and will Sol save her? So I'm like, does he know? Was he there? Did he just like get the sob story from Mae and decide to hang on to it? I don't know.
Yeah, a couple different things there. I get the sense that he was there on Brendock, that he was a witness,
you think,
to the events. Yeah.
He would have been relatively young though, right?
Well, we don't know. I mean, we know that the Sith extend their life and they want to be immortal. I mean, we know Aslan Rel lived for 150 years and he's not necessarily looking like somebody who is 150 years old, but I mean, I don't know.
Just for comparison's sake, I believe Mae and Osha are supposed to be like early 20s, 21-ish, 22-ish. And Amanda is 25 and Manny Jacinto is 38. So he's like a decent amount older than her. But obviously, like, is he human? We don't know. So it would make him a bit older if he was there on Brendock, but not like super old if he is a human being.
Because the big thing that made me question his involvement beyond just these past couple of days was Sol saying, what master hides his face from his pupil? And the stranger says, you tell me. And I don't know what to make of that line.
I do.
Because I think on a very surface level, it just implies that Sol has always been hiding behind a facade, putting on a different face, you know, this very loving master who treats younglings well and is a teacher and is a role model to be looked up to, but really he's got this past that is a bit darker than what people would be led to believe. And so he's putting on a face, and Chimere is kind of poking fun at the fact that you are hiding your true face because of what you've done and what you have not owned up to yet.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, maybe there's some more nefarious things going on that I think you want to talk about.
Okay. His mind is twisted by darkness. I've accepted my darkness. What have you done with yours? What have you done with your darkness? What have you done with your darkness? What have you consciously chosen with your darkness? It's giving. Say the name. You know where I'm about to go. It's giving darkness, light, separation, comac vitis, dividing the light from the dark. That in itself is an act of violence. To me, it was giving, he has, we've talked about choosing the light and that being a choice, right? With Eldar Man and with other characters in the galaxy. And it seems like Sol has chosen the light and made a conscious effort towards that. However, in doing so, he has repressed, hidden away, put in a locked box, and thrown it to the depths of the ocean, his darkness. He hides his darkness so that nobody else can see it. Torben was so consumed by his darkness that he took the Barash vow in an attempt to fix it. Kelnaka, the darkness affected him in such a way that he went into the forest and secluded himself and drew the Coven's symbol over and over and over and over and over and over on his walls. Sol seems to be doing pretty well, but he's hidden that darkness far, far away. And that in itself is a problem, isn't it? Because one, it's going to come back to bite him in the ass, and soon. And two, because in doing that, he's denied a part of himself and a part of his history. And I think that is really compelling. And I think finding that out is going to be really devastating for the Soul Patrol. Even though Sol has never done anything wrong, he could never do anything wrong. He's about to do something wrong, and we're going to deny it. Not in reality, but in our brains.
Yeah, and he taps into that, right? Like later on when he's lost Jeki, he's lost Yord, he goes on the offensive. He almost strikes the killing blow. He loses himself. And I think if that's within him, if he's capable of doing that, it's not his first time. He's tapping back into something. Yeah, he probably would have saved the galaxy, depending on how all of this ends up playing into, the Sith's rise to power. A lot could have been stopped, maybe just in a little small moment of poor judgment, Sol. But I get the sense he is unlocking something that has just been dormant rather than tapping into something new.
Well, yes, yeah,
because he is not even fighting with his saber in that moment. He is fist fighting. He is like punching and kicking and like throwing, like he is doing all sorts of stuff. And that moment where he, like, the camera kind of like pans on him and he like force pulls his lightsaber off the ground and like twirls it. I was like, that is such a cool shot. But also, Sol, please stop. You're going down a path I can't follow. Yeah, really tense moment for Sol. And I think that it won't be the last time he kind of battles with that. I think he'll have to continue pulling himself from the edge, maybe.
Well, I think that he feels that he's pulled himself from the edge and that he's done the work to pull himself from the edge and wipe his hands clean. But now that Osha is back in his life, he has to confront that head on, increasingly so, considering now Jeki is dead too. That's another Padawan that he has failed, and a person that he's failed.
Tragic, honestly.
Literally the worst. Literally the worst.
I mean, speaking of Jeki, maybe that's a place we can jump to. Jeki was a highlight of this episode because she goes toe-to-toe with Mae, gets her in handcuffs a couple of times. I for a second thought maybe they were both going to be handcuffed together and then like have to escape the forest. I don't know why my mind went there. I was like, oh, the handcuff's going to go around her hand accidentally and then they don't have the key and then they're going to have to like run away kind of thing.
What if there was only one set of handcuffs?
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of what if there was only one bed, like in terms of the silly tropes. What if the key gets lost?
Yeah, didn't go that way, but I found it interesting during that fight that Jeki pushed a couple of Mae's buttons pretty intensely between you killed Andara, you killed Kelnaka, you killed Torben, but also the fire that killed your family. That's what you're under arrest for as well. And that seems to be a moment when Mae really loses it and goes on the offensive. And to me, that indicated she truly did not start that fire. She is staying true. She knows her truth. She knows what she did and did not do. And so to hear a Jedi who stole her sister from her accuse her of killing their entire family and village with a fire that she knows she didn't start, that's her truth. And we'll find that out in episode 7, probably what her truth is. That ignited something within her that pissed her off.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, but for like a slightly different reason. I love that we are having different we're both responding to a lot of the same beats, but having different interpretations of them, which I think is delicious. So great. I love this for us. Um to me, Jackie listing off sorry, I you should see my notes, like the Q's and the J's and the M's and the S's instead of writing their full name. They're really chaotic and I had to do a lot of scratching out because I was writing very frantically. Not important. So Jackie listening or listing off Mae's crimes is such a really interesting representation of how blind the Jedi are in the eyes of Mae, right? Because yes, I think her kind of saying that sets her off, but Jackie being so committed in the middle of this lightsaber battle where everybody around her is dying to attempting to arrest Mae in a very formal manner, a la Yord. To me shows that like they are blind to the more important things at hand and they're blind to the truth because the truth isn't, you know, the most easily presented argument. Because right now it really does look like Mae killed Kalnaka because she happened to be there. Now she has a saber, but they're not going to take the time to listen or to work through things together. Instead, I'm just going to attempt to arrest you in the middle of a lightsaber battle with a person we've never seen before. So, yikes.
Yeah, Mae being there doesn't do her any favors. I think it's going to be hard to win her case, although we'll get to that in a bit because now she's a little bit undercover, one might say. But yeah, I thought Jackie did a really great job here. And then leading into the fight with the stranger, her dual wielding her and Kalnaka's lightsaber, the way she's like she was a dancer. She's like twirling around and jumping in the air and slicing down and really giving the stranger a run for his money for quite some time. I was really impressed. I think it was one of our listeners had sent a tweet in our Discord that said, you know, this would have been Jackie's trial that would have earned her the status of knight. And
yeah, that devastated me.
That was devastating because we know, you know, Obi-Wan's trial was killing Maul. And it just, you know, it makes you think, what would have been the road for Jackie? Like, what would have been her Jedi path? What lied ahead for her in the future? And that's sort of the most tragic thing about this whole episode is, you know, Yord's a stickler for the rules. That's okay. You know, Jackie was very empathetic. She was very in tune with the living force, I think. And so to think about their futures and to see those cut short in such a violent manner really takes you aback. And you know, we'll get into some conversation here shortly, I guess. Or maybe we can allude to it now. Was as soon
I can
as
fix him.
Jackie dying and Soul saying Jackie and Chimera going, was that its name? And then Soul says she was a child and he responds, you brought her here. And so again, you think about these characters' futures and what the potential was, and it's cut short. You know, they joined the Jedi for peace and justice, but they were brought on this mission as a kid, to be a soldier, to bring in this bad guy. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
How many more Jedi Padawans are going to die because of the Jedi's choices in the future? A lot.
Hey, the Guardian protocols.
And they have died in the past in the High Republic. Totally. The Jedi have not made good choices for their Padawans time and time again. And Chimera is acknowledging that. You brought her here. This blood's on your hands. You could have left her home, but you brought a Padawan to a very dangerous situation.
Yeah. It's really interesting because Jackie in the last episode, in truly not knowing what she's getting herself into, says, you know, what is that? So using like a non-human way to describe the stranger, the tooth fairy, and in Jackie's death, he does the same thing about her. And I thought that was just like a really interesting parallel, really upsetting overall. Because the reason why Jackie is saying it that way is because she's never encountered, maybe she's not even learned about like what a Sith is, or like what their MO is because they're not a threat anymore. So they're just like a distant history rather than anything tangible. And then for Jackie to be so tangible, you know, a young person, and then to deny her humanity after he's murdered her, is rough. It's rough.
It really displays the ruthlessness of Chimere and his ability to then switch up and be like, hello, you know, back into old silly guy Chimere, like with my little potions and my little drinks. And isn't our job just like awful? You know, like he's able to slip in and out of that mode so easily, which just proves he is that master manipulator, that gaslighter, that groomer, and has been trying to groom Mae into this perfect pupil for reasons we'll talk about in a second. But like, he is good. He's good. And I mean like good in the sense that
being bad.
Good at being bad. Exactly.
Yeah. When I went back and I watched a bit of episode 2, I was thinking about his vocal patterns and how high his speech was. He was really speaking in a voice that was much closer to the performance we got from Manny as Jason in The Good Place, which is this kind of like aloof, a little bit silly. He's just a silly little guy performance.
Big bottles.
But it's like, well, this could be happening and that could be happening. And I don't really know, but this is a thing that's happening and yada, yada, yada. And it's very up and it's kind of lilty. And then when he speaks as, you know, the evil himself, it's very eerie and flowing in a way. And very determined. And there isn't as much of that lilting. It's also positioned much lower in his voice. I also just have to hand it to the Mask's vocoder. The voice they have on him for the Mask is great. So delicious, so yummy, so good. Loved everything about that. I'm not normally a Mask girly, and Darth Teeth is terrifying. The teeth, there's a lot of teeth. However, if he wants to put on the mask and read me a bedtime story, that's cool. I just would like to put that out there.
Spider went up the water spout.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to call out some of the inspiration of The Stranger and why Manny was cast in this role specifically. I just thought it was really interesting from the EW article. The Stranger was inspired by the character of the drunken cat from the 1966 Hong Kong martial arts film Come Drink With Me. It was about this seemingly inebriated goofball who was only, you know, all about drinking and breaking into song. And it's later revealed they're a powerful Shaolin master who takes down a group of bandits. And Leslie, it was not just like The Good Place where she saw Manny. It was the film 9 Perfect Strangers, which came out during the pandemic. I think it came out around the time of the pandemic. I might be wrong on that, but for her, she was like, oh my God, because it was a much more serious role for Manny. And so for her to see that dichotomy between like, he played a really goofy guy in The Good Place and then this like very serious role in 9 Perfect Strangers. And it was like, that's the guy we're going to cast for the, I don't even think he like had to audition for the role. It said he just got the part because they're like, Leslie was like, that's who I want for this specific role. Has to be that kind of silly guy, but also is threatening.
I love the vision. Like, I'm so glad she was like, yeah, Manny just endorsed the guy. Because, I mean, I don't think I've seen him in anything outside of The Good Place, but I loved his Good Place performance because it is just so silly, goofy. Like, it's really skilled in being silly, goofy. And so to see him play something that is sinister is incredible because he can do it and he's so good at it. And you don't see the funny, goofy guy in the sinister. Like, he's a great actor. And I don't think I underestimated him, but I just didn't, I don't think I fully understood like the wealth of his talent. And I'm so glad we're seeing a lot of it displayed here. And it makes me want to go see everything he's ever been in and want him to get cast in all the things. Like, make him the romantic lead, make him the villain, make him the very serious guy, make him the funny guy. Like, I want everything.
Yeah, I actually want to go watch that movie, 9 Perfect Strangers. Like, I feel like I have an obligation now to watch the film that got him the role of the coolest, most badass Sith Lord that we've had. Shout out to Canada, by the way, for giving us Sith Lords constantly. Like, thank you for your service. Love you.
To Canada?
To Canada, yes. Another Canadian Sith Lord. We're collecting them like Infinity Stones. It's great.
I love it.
I love
for
it.
You.
Yeah.
Even though you're not Canadian, but you're Canadian by marriage.
Yeah. Canadian wife who was definitely very real, but you wouldn't know her. You actually would know her, but I do
know
wanna,
her.
Yeah, I know. I want to shout out to the Manny trained 4 months for this fight scene, and he did the majority, if not all, of the stunts behind the mask. So I think that's incredible. Like his commitment not only to the portrayal of the role, but also the physicality of the role and learning that movement and learning how the stranger like flows through a fight. I just think it's a whole level of acting that I think is incredible for Manny.
Yeah.
Standout role.
The physical work for sure is really impressive, aside from the biceps and the triceps. And the
right.
forearms.
Yeah.
And the hands. It's fine. It's cool. I just want to shout out this moment of like when Soul does say like, take off your mask. What kind of master hides his face? He responds at one point and let you read my thoughts. No. And I was like, the Batman in parentheses 2022. I loved that. That was great for me. But it also made me wonder, like, how has he been taken advantage of by this power in the past? And I went back to episode 2 to really think about this. And I didn't have enough time. I really wanted to go watch all the episodes again, but I've just had a couple of crazy busy days. So it unfortunately didn't happen. Earlier today, I spelled words and then I lost. But I spelled for raising money for Point of Pride. So on Yap Sesh podcast. Okay. There's my like random plug in there. It was really fun. But how was he taken advantage of in the past? I think at one point Soul is like, well, yeah, he doesn't know the identity either. Or was convinced that Mae didn't know.
Well, Chimere in episode 2 does say, "Are you going to do that like mind wipe thing to me?"
Right,
you know?
right. But but he says it in a very kind of sort of unserious manner, and yet
is there some truth
so
there?
Serious.
Yeah,
right. Like what's happened to him in the past, or what has he seen that has made him feel this way about this power? Which I think is really fair because, invading somebody's mind like that, you could say, I've been talking about the Force as intention a lot throughout this series. And like, you could very easily say that is a dark side power, a negative power, right? Because that's like an invasion, rather than a gift or a good thing. But the Jedi, of course, don't see it that way. So there must be others who do see it that way. And of course, would therefore not be friends of the Jedi.
Much to chew on there. I want to know more of Chimere's past with the Jedi, and we'll talk here in a second about his motivations. But I think, right before that, I do want to also shout out, Osha and Yord going through the forest. But the moment where Mae is under duress and she has a moment where she calls out to Osha, and Osha hears Mae, and Osha says, "We have to go back," and it's literally word for word what Leia says in Empire Strikes Back when they have the like Luke, Leia moment when Luke is dangling from Cloud City. So I just like love that, small callback. And there's another great callback later in the episode from Mae as well.
So the question I had when seeing Little Mae was, is Little Mae actually Mae? The conversation we've been having across episodes thus far in our very crazy theories is, well, there's got to be a changeling here. There's got to be some sort of deception in some way, and I think that there are a couple of things that could lend themselves in that direction, either like a visual deception or something of that sort. And one of these things is the red pollen or dust outside of Kelnaka's home. It could be nothing. It could just be like a really strong visual counterpoint because it's very much in motion. It's falling. It's in the air, and it also gives this great color to the ground. Also, with the force push, it looking like a hand of some sort, something that's reaching out and grabbing, I think is great, which made me think of like the invisible hand or the force touching everything. The invisible hand, as in the ship, which I saw a mini Lego invisible hand at Target the other day, and I was like, my prequel. But that's an aside. I just really love General Grievous. Not important for this episode, but important for other episodes.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. But we see both Osha and Mae at different points in this episode face down in this dust, which I just think is interesting that we see this motif happen for both of them. And I'm not sure if there's anything happening there. I just think that it's interesting. But right before we see little Mae, we get this moment, this clear moment of the stranger, Chimere, our Tooth Fairy. I haven't decided on what I'm going to call him all the time. I'm attached to Tooth Fairy.
I'm dipping more into Darth Teeth territory. It's pretty fun.
I just feel like it's a little personally offensive that you're not supporting my Tooth Fairy vibes, but I'll get over it. Anyway, we see that Chimere is very clearly in Mae's head at the timestamp is 13:05. Like, it's a really close up shot when he's like, "You're a coward." And I think that's weird because that's the first time we've gotten something like that. But it also follows the moment, where Yord is like, he doesn't follow rules of combat, yada, yada. Well, he gets in your head and stays there. And then Osha says, well, I've seen this happen to somebody before. My mother could do this. It's interesting. Just put a pin in that. But it makes the fact that there's a visual little Mae or an audio little Mae in Osha's head, to me, all the more compelling, because is this a power that Osha and Mae actually have? Or is this the Palpatine and the Snoke of it all? Force time vibes orchestrated by someone else.
Right. Like, is it actually Mae calling to her, or is it Chimere planting the idea that Mae is calling out to bring her back from not leaving that planet?
Right. Because we get little Mae a couple of times and we get little Osha. Do we get little Osha in the vision on the Torban planet?
Episode
okay.
1. Yeah.
So we get a little bit of her too. But is the little Mae that Osha is seeing actually little Mae? Because there's a sort of surprise and a wonder on Mae's face when she sees actual alive large Osha in the middle of episode 2. So there's a sense of, we get this vision in episode 1, but wouldn't that confirm to Mae Osha's status as alive? Especially if that's the first time that's happened in years or something of that sort. Is Mae seeing this too, or is it just Osha? I have a lot of questions about this kind of force connectedness now that we've seen Chimere specifically in Mae's head.
I also think there's a couple of moments throughout the show where we've intentionally sat on, like, had the camera on Osha waking up. We see it in episode 1.
Like literally
waking up from sleep. We've seen it multiple times already. We see it at the beginning of this episode. She wakes up from a daze from getting flung into a tree.
You're
right.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is necessarily nothing. Like, I think there is some intention there that we maybe don't know yet. But I think that's something we should keep in mind of, like, what is she seeing when she is asleep? Like, what is she, is the Tooth Fairy in her head planting some idea that startles her awake in the beginning of episode 1, right? And I think we'll explore more of this, and potentially in the flashback, if we know that her mom was able to do this, and we kind of saw it maybe with Torben a bit. Maybe this is partly what played into that night on Brendock, the ability to get in people's heads and show them things they didn't want to be shown. Maybe that's what drove Torben into the Barash vow. Maybe that's what led Kelnaka to have an idea in his mind that he couldn't quite let go of and start drawing symbols on a wall and completely isolate himself from the rest of the world because he just couldn't get it out of his head no matter how hard he tried, right? It's like a thing that sticks there, like Gord says, and you just can't get rid of it. And I think that's all connected.
I ultimately agree. I think there's something there that we have yet to put all the border pieces in our puzzle together to give us the full picture.
Episode 7 is going to be very telling if we do get that other flashback episode directed by Kogonada.
we're assuming that at this point that would be episode 7.
Yes.
Just because Kogonada is directing that one. And that would be a cool kind of parallel. So that's why we keep saying episode 7. So we've talked a bit about, I'm looking at my progression of notes here. We've talked about the mask breaking and the sabers glitching a little bit. We've talked a little bit about Jackie's death. You were too pure for this world, Jackie. We love you. The saber dual wielding. What's its name, right? I would like to talk, you know, you've been saying Sith Lord a lot, and I've got my Sith in quotes. Let's talk about Chimere saying, you know, but the Jedi like you might call me Sith. Because I think we have maybe a different opinion about this. I'm not convinced he's actually a Sith. Yes, I know Manny Jacinto said this Sith Lord in the EW article. I'm going, I don't see it. What EW article? For the sake of this conversation. Well, he also was like, yeah, I didn't get to do any of the lightsaber stuff in this series. So when we were on set, I took Charlie and Daphne's and I took some selfies and I had my fun Jedi time. So he's a liar, okay? I said with love. His job necessitated him to be a liar, just like Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, I have no name, but the Jedi like you might call me Sith. And I'm not disagreeing with you. Like I was also of the mind that when I first heard that, it was not confirmation that he is Sith. But he is admitting that what the Jedi would consider him as is Sith, because the Jedi think in a dichotomy. They think of good and bad. This isn't about good and bad. This is about power and who's allowed to use it, right? Jedi say Sith.
Real.
Manny, I think this is Manny poking fun at them to say, like, you guys think in a very simplistic, two-sided binary way. You'd call me Sith because that's the only way you think about. I think there have been, like, and I hate to say this, like, I think Amandla has mentioned the word Grey Jedi in an interview or two here and there, and I don't want to necessarily like start that conversation about like Grey Jedi because it's been like hotly debated for a while.
The discourse on Grey Jedi
is just vile.
I
don't want to tread it again.
And everybody, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Yeah. But it does make you wonder who is he reporting to also? Like, is he reporting to somebody that does consider themselves a Sith, but he wants to not even fit into that mold? And maybe that's why he wants a pupil so bad, is because he wants to usurp maybe whoever his master is, and he wants to start a new way, a new path, a new way of using the Force that isn't the Jedi way, but is a different way that isn't entirely Sith, or it isn't entirely this way or that, you know? And that's kind of where I'm leaning, is I still don't think he is quite a Sith. I think it is also a red herring. But I do love the moment, why risk discovery? He goes, well, I did wear a mask. I love that. You know, that was kind of the silly Chimere coming out in that moment.
I think that's actually so interesting, because you might call me Sith doesn't mean that he is a Sith. He wants freedom to wield his power in the way that he likes it, regardless of the Jedi. I don't make the rules that Jedi do, and the Jedi say I can't exist. They see my face, they all die. They will die. There are two ways that you can interpret this sentence. The I can't exist, right? There's the I can't exist, and the Jedi say I can't exist as in a proclamation. The Jedi say I can't exist. There's no possible way I exist. Because they don't believe I exist. Right? And then there's the I can't exist. So I saw this sentence as being understood in the sense of disbelief, in the sense of proclamation. And the proclamation is anybody who's seen my face has died, which is interesting to me because have we heard about other Jedi dying before this, before our four masters were targeted? That's a question. But there's an I can't exist as in disbelief. Like the Jedi say I can't exist. There's no way that I possibly exist. So I would like to exist, and therefore that's why I murder everybody, right? Because you're against me. You're against the fact of my existence.
Right. The Jedi say I can't exist, therefore I cannot exist. Therefore, my
Yes,
existence cannot be known, so I have to kill anybody who does. And that to me is like very Sith coded. That to me is saying I don't make the rules, the Jedi do. But I think there was like a slight pause in between those 2 points. Like I don't make the rules and the Jedi do. Because I think in some sense, like maybe there are rules that he is following that somebody else above him dictated to him. Hey, if you ever get caught, you kill. If your face ever gets seen, you kill anybody who's seen your face, because nobody can know what the Sith are doing. Nobody can know that we still exist. The Jedi say we can't, therefore we cannot.
Right. And I think the thing of like, oh, it was the moment, why risk discovery? Well, I did wear a mask. Why risk discovery? Why, again, go so hard for Mae's plan? Why show up on these populated worlds when it could mean you are discovered? Yes, you are undercover. You've got your I'm just a silly guy vibe, but you also bring a pretty big bag to Kofar. What's in there? The teeth. The teeth are in there. Which makes me feel like the fact that he's even risking discovery tells me he's not the master. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's a bigger, badder bad. Because the bigger, badder bad, the mastermind wouldn't be so foolish as to even wear a mask in public. Like, you're not going to see him because he's so underground. And I also think, to me, that the fact that Chimere doesn't say apprentice, he says pupil, he says acolyte, but he does not say apprentice. And I think that the language we have for Sith is master and apprentice. And so I thought that was interesting as well. I think there's a bigger, better bad.
No, that's a good point too, because him using the word acolyte maybe indicates he isn't Sith, because he wouldn't speak in these exact terms. You're saying, like, he would say, "I want an apprentice."
Right. If he's not the Sith Lord, right? If he's not the Sith Master, then he is the apprentice. So he wouldn't say that I want an apprentice. I want an acolyte so I can kill them. We can kill the master, and then that person can become my apprentice. Mm-hmm. If we're thinking in the scheme of rule of 2, like, I don't know if it kind of dissuades me from Sith, but it specifically dissuades me from Sith Master.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
You know, I think there is still a bigger bad. I mean, we know there's a bigger bad, right? Like we know Plagueis is, I'm not saying it is exactly Plagueis, but like we know there are bigger bads out there. We know we are going to get to the biggest of the bads in like 70 years when Palpatine rises to power.
Babes.
You know, so.
Palpy babes, Shivi.
Yeah. I'm just trying to pinpoint. Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see like where Chimere fits into all of this. I know there's also been speculation about, is Chimere the beginning of the Knights of Ren? Which I think is a very, very fascinating line of thinking to go down.
Arms in the Knights of Ren too?
There were, yeah. I think Ren was basically shirtless when he trained Kylo for the entire time.
Were there any arms in the Knight of Ren? Well, yes. In the comics, he's like, there's all sorts of, there's arms, there's pecs, and then there's a mask. Yeah. You know, like it's a vibe. But now I'm looking at all of the actual like Knights of Ren and the terms of the sequel era. They're all quite clothed. They've got sleeves on. But my favorite, let's remember, is Aplek. Aplek is my favorite Knight of Ren. Do you have a favorite Knight of Ren?
I don't.
Oh,
I don't.
You should get one.
Didn't know enough about them to have a favorite.
Aplek's the one with the big, like, axe situation.
Okay.
I don't know what that's called.
Got it.
Staff?
Sure.
Axe situation?
Yeah.
Yeah. Aplek.
People were thinking that because at the end of this episode, we briefly hear Kylo's theme.
Yeah, we do.
And I think
clearly.
That's why people were thinking, maybe he is a Knight of Ren. Maybe this is where the Knights of Ren starts. And like, I could see that. I could see that being the case. I could see that being that could be a possibility. I don't think it needs to be that. I'm not torn one way or the other, but I think it's interesting to have that thought. And I also think it's very funny that as we're talking about, you know, hot villains coming back into Star Wars, and like we're back in our TLJ era of like crazy online vitriol that's like super bad, but also like really good Star Wars happening. And also like the Knights of Ren are back in the conversation. Like what's happening? Time is a flat circle. We're back. You know, we're so back.
Dare I say it's like poetry and that it rhymes.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Very interesting conversation though. I love the fact that, after we lose Yord, unfortunately, neck snap, most brutal way to go in Star Wars.
And then he throws his body.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Very, very bad.
Yeah.
Pip being the light to go on Kymir's back and lure away or lure in the Umbra moths who are take Kymir away and give our heroes a fighting chance to escape. I also thought it was really interesting that the episode guide said a group of Umbra moth is called an eclipse.
Beautiful. I love everything about that.
Yeah. So very cool.
Yeah, I'm glad we got the payoff of the bugs in this one because they were absolutely set up in episode 4 and then they didn't go anywhere. And I was like, well, that's a shame. Guess they'll have to maybe do something in the future. But this was a great do something in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love. We were on Stardust Records last week talking about the episode, and I was like, oh man, I hate the bugs. I can't believe I have to talk about the bug episode. That's what I was concerned about. And like, man, I hate bugs. I don't mess with bugs. I do mess with bugs. I take it back. Because Kymir getting grabbed by the bugs, that was pretty rewarding. That was great. We liked that.
Good payoff.
Definitely. Bugs have rights, actually? Question mark?
So we end up with just Mae, Osha, and Soul. Osha has a moment of like, wait, why did he say I can't trust you? And then Soul's like, I will tell you again on the ship. He's not going to tell her on the ship. Second time you said it, Soul.
Right, because Osha's not going to the ship, buddy.
Yeah. Soul gets stunned, and now we have like the long-awaited conversation between Mae and Osha, which fascinating. I have a lot of questions about this one, and how it ends also, kind of where things get left off between them. But Mae is saying that everything she's done has been for her and the family, and Osha is like, no, everything you've done has only been for yourself. All the lives that we've lost today are on your hands again, right? So there's that reminder of Mae, you caused the fire that killed our family, by the way. So here you just did it again and killed the closest thing I've had to a family, even more so than you've ever been family to me. The Jedi have been my family. And Mae says, have you forgotten who we are, where we come from? They invaded our home. And Osha calls her the violent one. You started that fire. And Mae says, they've brainwashed you. They've turned you against me, but it's okay, Osha. I can help you. I can help you return to yourself. I love you. Don't choose them again. We both survived. All we have is each other now.
Can we break this down into like very granular level?
Yeah.
Great. I find Mae in this scene very interesting. And I think we're missing something really big with her. I think we're missing something really big. I know we're missing something really big because I feel like you can feel it in this episode, but we also know that we're going to get we presume that we're going to get the Mae perspective to everything that happened. So we are missing a piece of Mae's motivation. Mae goes between like being really calculated in this scene and attempting to be really gentle, but it comes off as something insincere. Like it comes off wrong, clearly, to Osha, but like it just comes off a bit wishy-washy in terms of her emotional stance in the scene. Does that make any sense? Do you agree with that? Or did you kind of understand where Mae was coming from? Maybe I'm missing something.
I feel like the point is she's not thinking rationally in the scene. And I think a great example of that is they've turned you against me. That's a line that we've heard from Anakin Skywalker to Padme,
yeah.
Well, he says it to Obi-Wan, like, you turned her against me. You have done that yourself, right? And
right, yes.
And
I love that you yeah. That's a great Anakin.
But time and time again in Star Wars, when we've seen these moments of you've turned against me, but there's another way. Join me, And we've seen it with Kylo and Rey of like, you're nothing, but not to me. This is that moment of this is Kylo's moment for Mae of like, I am so lost, but all I know is that if you're at my side, I will not feel lost. I'm kind of mad about the situation. I'm mad that they brainwashed you. I'm mad that they turned you against me, but I can help. I need you. I need you. I don't know if I can live in a world where I don't have you now. Now that I know you exist, now that I know you're alive, I need you. But I also can help you. And I can bring you back to who you were, to the sister that I loved. Like, it's more of the potential that Mae sees for Osha to return to that sister bond they once had. Like, that's what's really driving her. Like, I don't think she necessarily respects the person that Osha is right now, but she's so desperate to get back to that time when they were close. So she's willing to take that chance despite all the conflict that she feels about Osha and the Jedi.
Yeah, I think that's actually really thoughtful. Because we see that glimmer of hope when she's like, Oshi? And maybe that's why I'm so funky about it, because this doesn't feel as hopeful in the vocal tone. It feels a little rehearsed. Like, she's thought about, okay, if Osha's alive, what am I going to say to her? How will I bring her back in? Sort of a vibe. Like, this kind of pipe dream scenario, and now she's getting it, and it feels maybe a little rehearsed, but it has a solid intention, is kind of where I feel like you're getting at. Like, the intention is actually good. It's just she doesn't know how to communicate it well for Osha, who has already very clearly made up her mind about who Mae is. You know, like, she says, you started the fire. You're the violent one. You're the violent one. That's like very accusatory and very definitive. And she doesn't, and Mae doesn't have the same sort of accusations towards Osha, except within the context of like, have you forgotten who we are? You know, like, did you forget? And then she says, they've brainwashed you. They've turned you against me. It's not you've turned against me. It's the blame lies elsewhere. I think that's really interesting that Mae doesn't accuse her directly of a particular situation, and Osha does accuse Mae very directly of the situation.
And I think Osha does teeter on joining Mae in the situation. I feel like she's close. And I think what snaps her out of it, that hug, you know, that moment when they hug and it's like, oh, this feels good, which
is like the most seamless, insane visual effects situation. I was waiting for the match cut. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Pretty good.
I was waiting to like go frame by frame by frame and like see the cut, not in a bad way, but like, wow, they put this together really well. It was really smooth. And I like, that was like the most seamless hug I've ever seen in my life. That was just a brilliant display of visual effects. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's the moment during that hug when Mae says, we both survived. All we have each other is now. And that made me think of probably one of Jeki's final words to Osha, which was, we're not defined by what we lose, we're defined by what we survive. And here, Mae using the word we both survived, I think is evoking that memory in Osha's mind and thinking, I'm defined by what I survive. I'm here with my sister, but I don't want my sister to define me. Therefore, I do not want to go with my sister, because I'm always somebody who has wanted to be my own person. I don't want to be defined by who my sister is. I want to define myself. I want to have my own journey. I don't want to just be my sister because we're the only two kids here. Right. And so I think that kind of wakes her up from this trance of like, oh, it feels so good to be back with my sister. Maybe I would like this life, to remembering like, no, what do I want to define myself as? Thinking of Jeki's final words and being like, I don't want this.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's never wanted to kind of be a part of, or you know, be a part of her sister from the beginning. And she doesn't want the responsibility that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know how we talked about how like either soul dies and we never get the story, and then Mae and Osha team up to go figure out the truth against the stranger, or the other one was soul tells her in the ship and it ruins her relationship with him and ruins everything, and now they have to like, the part of the story is like rebuilding their trust. There was a secret third option. There was a secret or third option, and it was the Parent Trap. And I can't believe we didn't consider that.
Yeah, we're kind of fools for not thinking of this one. What a parent trap.
Especially when Chimera's like, you look just like her.
Yeah. Like, of course they were going to trade places. I
Like,
mean, it was
they
right
literally
there.
told us.
Yeah. Like, talk about telegraphing. I think thinking of the twins going their separate ways, there's this quote from Leslie. Quote, part of her mission is not just to finish her kill list. Now that her sister's alive, part of her mission is to prove how the Jedi, and especially Soul, are not who Osha thinks they are.
Right.
And then Manny, on the other hand, is saying Osha is going to want to hear some of the things that the stranger has to say.
Yeah.
And it's mentioned that, the second half of the season is really going to focus more on like the father-daughter aspect of the show, whereas the first half was more about the sister-sister dynamic. And so it's going to be really fascinating because we know that Soul was going to tell Osha on the ship, and now he's going to be telling Mae his truth. And so Mae hearing it and pretending to be Osha, is she going to buy into the truth that Soul tells her? Where now, on the other hand, Osha is going to buy into the truth that the stranger tells her. And so it's going to be this like weird situation where Mae comes to light and is like, wait, the Jedi are good. But then Osha is like, no, the Jedi are bad. And so they're not only like trading places in the sense of their physical location and who they're with, but also their philosophies are going to change places. And it's like, no, we were almost on the same page, but we flipped.
Right.
Like, I actually believe, it's like Mae saying, I actually believe Soul based on what he says. He seems genuine. Like, it's not like the Jedi are totally not culpable in what happened, but like, I see his perspective. Also, here's mine.
Yeah. And I think that Osha has the potential to lose herself because she was so accusatory towards Mae. She had a vision of who Mae is. And she said, you're the violent one. You started the fire. There's no room for discussion there. That's very anger leads to hate, I won't do it the whole thing. It's because I don't know the whole thing. But I think that's really compelling. But there's also a couple of confounding factors at play that make it very curious to see who will know what and how they will ultimately get caught. Because yes, Mae and Osha look exactly alike. However, Osha has a tattoo that when she is turned over by Chimera on the ground, we see very clearly in the center of the screen. Right? Confounding factor number 1. Confounding factor number 2 is with Mae. There's this little guy. His name is Basil. And he's got Pip. And he's walking onto the ship and sniffing and seeming a little confused.
Sniffing away.
How will this foil the plan of the swapperoo? Is yet to be seen. But I would think it would be super interesting if both of our, in this case, father figures, are in the know and they are acting as if they are not in the know with the, like manipulating in that way.
Well, I disagree on one half of that, where I think the stranger will know and he will make it very obvious that he does know because he needs to manipulate Osha. He needs to earn her trust. Like, he can't lie to her, like in the sense that like, oh, I think you're Mae. Like, he's going to be very upfront about it. But like Osha or Mae is not going to be upfront about it about Soul, and Soul's not going to catch on. And that's, again,
you
that's
don't
like,
think Basil's going to rat her out?
I think Basil will. Basil is the key to all of this, but I think it'll be like an end of episode 6. Basil rats her out. And then episode 7 will be like, okay, it's me, Soul. Let me tell you my truth. And then episode 7 is like the flashback of Mae's perspective telling to Soul of like, here's what happened. I didn't start the fire. Here's what happened from my point of view. And then episode 8 being the season finale is, okay, now Soul knows Mae's truth. Mae knows Soul's truth. But now Osha's the one that's lost. How can we save Osha? That's kind of where I feel the direction is going. I think there's going to be a lot of revelations that come out in the next 2 weeks. And again, I think they will trade places because the stranger will be so forthcoming with Osha about, I know it's you, Osha, but like, don't you want to hear what I have to say? Like a little bit.
Right. Don't you want to know why I took Mae under my wing?
Mm-hmm.
Don't you want to know maybe why I was there on Brendock that day? If he was.
What I offered her? Do you want to see your mom again?
Oh.
You know?
Oh. That's, yeah.
I mean, that's like a tale as old as time with Star Wars. Like, do you want to see your parents? Like Ezra Bridger and Palpatine. Like, here, just go through the doorway, Ezra. You can go be with your family. Don't you want it?
And we know that nothing is novel. Nothing is novel. That's what I keep saying in the show. Nothing is actually novel, whether it be the plot beats in what we expect or the type of characters that we see. And this is not, negative, but I think we just have to understand that everything we have seen in this show is just quintessential Star Wars. We've seen it before. So I think we should expect something like that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of the stranger, let's finally here talk about Kymir's words to close out the episode. And I have some questions because he finds Osha on the ground. My first question is, he heals her. There is a scar in her midsection or a wound of some kind. Where did that wound come from? We don't see it in the episode anywhere.
That's like a really good question.
Did Mae stab her before did she leave Osha for dead? Because to me, it almost looks like a lightsaber impaled her.
Right.
It's a circular hole in her clothing, seared through her clothing into her midsection.
Yeah, I'm a little bit stuck on that one. I do not know.
Yeah, and if I completely missed it, somebody who's listening, let me know. But like, I feel like, we saw Mae get tossed, or Osha get tossed against the tree. We saw Mae cut her hair with a lightsaber, and then it cuts away. And then we see Osha on the ground with a wound. So to me, that says like maybe she just left her for dead and was like, I'm going to do the rest of this and play your life. Because it means my freedom if I play your life. Right? And maybe that's how twisted Mae is. I don't know. I don't know. Or was it just a life-threatening wound and I don't know where it came from earlier in the battle. I don't know.
That's such a good question. I'm completely...
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. But Kymir comes in and says, what extraordinary beings we are. Even in the revelation of our triumph, you see the depth of our despair.
Yeah, what the fuck was that line? Let's pause. What the fuck was that?
Whoa. Okay. Slow your roll there, Kymir. This is some like, I share my dreams with ghosts moment right here.
No, that was like fucked. Like I don't even I do not know what was happening in that line.
Yeah.
I have no commentary other than like that was messed up. It felt messed up. Anyway, that's it.
Even in the revelation of our triumph, you see the depth of our despair. Who is our despair? Who is our and our despair?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
Is it the outcasts of the galaxy? Our despair as people who are tossed aside? And maybe that's how he'll get to her of like, you were tossed aside by your sister. I was outcast by the Jedi. Maybe we have something in common. But what is the revelation of our triumph? Like revelation being something found out, something realized.
Right.
And what is the triumph? No thoughts. Head empty.
I'm lost. No notes. Head empty. Seriously. I've got nothing.
I mean, maybe the revelation of our triumph is living. I don't know. I'm just trying to make sense. Like our triumph is we both now get to fight another day. Like I survived the bugs. I just healed your wound for you. And now you get another chance. But even in our second chance at life or whatever we want to do, like you see the depth of our despair. We've been outcast. We've been tossed aside. I don't know. I'm just trying to make sense of it. And maybe I don't have the answer this week. Maybe if I have another like 6 days and some more Kymir dialogue to think on it, I'll figure it out. But maybe this is one we revisit.
Yeah. Put a pin in it. We'll come back to it when we have more context.
I have to ask you, are you on the Kymir, Osha, Are we back in the Raylo era? Like, how are you feeling?
Okay.
How are you feeling?
Okay. I am a girly who will ship anything and everything. I love all the ships. Yeah, why not? Yeah, why not? Yeah, why not? That's my hot take. Yeah, why not? I love he's like so evil and spooky that I have to just love him and ship him with everybody. Like it's just like a fact of life. You know, if you aren't shipping your villain, I mean, then like more power to you, live your best life. But like, what are you doing?
I mean, I think to Mae telling Osha that she was living a life without purpose, without love, without family.
Oh.
And so if we think about purpose, maybe the stranger will give her the purpose. Maybe the stranger will offer her love. And maybe the stranger will also offer her family.
Oh, she's like, you're like, she just needs a man to help give her these things.
No. That's not what I'm saying.
I know I'm messing with you. I'm sorry. I'm baiting you. That was mean of me. Forgive me.
But my thought there being, maybe the stranger can offer her all the things that the Jedi could never, and that the Jedi tell themselves they won't ever take on, right? Like no attachments, no feelings, no emotion.
Sure.
Being with the stranger could be intoxicating in a way to let a lot of those things in that she wasn't feeling before, you know? So I don't know. It's kind of an interesting line to ponder on, but I'm a little down. You know, I feel like I wasn't thirsty enough for Chimera on this episode, but my oh my, the man's got a bicep. I'm looking very disrespectfully. I'm sorry, Chimera.
Yeah.
Like the shiny light of your muscle. Like what is going on? Like I have to say, Leslie Headland knew exactly what she was doing with the show, and having him be like sweaty, greasy hair, like muscle defined, sleeveless in Seattle. Like she knew exactly what she was doing.
Sleeveless in
right? Like
Seattle.
she was feeding the rats on schedule is all I'm saying. So I feel like we could
Right.
have more feeding in the weeks to come. Is all I will say.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
I would like to see it respectfully.
I love a good arm. I love a good arm.
I love a good
love
temptation
a good
of the
arm.
Force. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let our characters experience a little bit of temptation to the dark side, a little bit of lust, a little bit of, you know, things you shouldn't be feeling if you're a Jedi. Like, come on.
And you can definitely feel that when you look at a really muscular arm.
See, we're at the
real. You laugh, but that's real.
We're at the 1 hour 40 minute mark, so this is the point when nobody's left listening on the show, and we can say whatever we want, which is why I asked this question to close us out. So we will see in the coming weeks what happens.
That's right.
Thank you.
And I look forward to more ARM content. Let's go, baby.
Yeah, maybe we should have a new segment like Arm of the Week moment. Yeah, Arm of the Week moment.
Arm of the Week moment.
We'll workshop it. We'll workshop it. Off air.
That doesn't quite live up to our naming standards, but that's okay. We can play with that.
Yeah,
we can figure that out.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode, Sarah. We've had almost hour and a half to 2 hours talking about episode 5. It was a gargantuan one to talk about, and warranted a lengthier conversation. And I'm excited for the weeks ahead. So if those of you listening want to join us on that journey and hear all about episodes 6, 7, and 8 coming up, follow us on our socials and the podcast platform of your choice, so our new episodes drop into your feed. And we have a lot of other exciting things coming in the next couple of weeks as well, in terms of interviews and book discussions, so you don't want to miss it.
That's right. And we also have a Patreon where our patrons help keep the lights on at Friends of the Force. We are exceptionally grateful for their support. So thank you to Ben, Brian, Cheryl, Clay, David, Emma, Jennifer, Katie, Knights of Ren, Leanne, Logan, Lucy, Lindsay, Matthew, Nathan, Nicole, Rob, Ruth, Santa, Skytalkers, Tom, and Travis. Very grateful for all of your support, and to every single person who takes the time out of their day to join us for these Acolyte conversations. I hope you are having a good day. Whatever you are doing, make sure to stay hydrated. It is the summer. And take care of yourselves, as these Acolyte episodes have been such a roller coaster so far.
Hopefully a little less tragedy next week.
I am begging.
But also, Star Wars is tragedy, so expect the expected. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%.
Well, thank you once again, everybody, for listening. And until next time, may the arms be with you always.
Bye.